Hey guys, welcome back. It's Mike with Kiss Dog Training. Today we are going to tackle an email I got. This is from Erin. She is a podcast listener. Basically, she says that in the past she's had two really good rescue dogs that were both puppies when she got them. She has got a new dog named Rupert, who is an Irish Wolfhound mix. She did extensive research on the breed, kind of knows what she's getting into. And Rupert is about 16 months old now. He weighs about 80 pounds. He was neglected and kept in a kennel outside for the better part of his life. He is a sweet, shy boy who has yet to show any kind of aggression towards any other animals or kids. She has two cats, and he has been around kids as part of his socialization. After the fourth week of him being in my house, his personality started to shine. He does not appear to be a real confident dog, and that he always looks unsure about himself. I imagine that will change with time. I have taught him how to sit, how to lay down, and we are currently working on stay. He picks up on things very quickly. However, he is so distracted, even in the backyard. Hand signals and alone with verbal commands seem to work best. I understand that everything new to him will be new to him, especially since he was kept in a kennel for so long and did not get the experience of the world when he was younger. The problem that we are having is that the leash training and him being distracted when we're practicing. Sometimes just the wind blowing distracts him. We typically work 15 to 20 minutes sessions 2 to 3 times a day, but he does not walk well on a leash. We do not use any kind of training collars, just regular ones, a harness, and practice positive reinforcement. I think that I may be jumping the gun a bit because he is still new to the environment, but I want to make sure I'm doing right by him and training him in a way he understands. Any advice you could provide or talk about on the show rewarding training dogs? I guess what she meant was in rewarding dogs and puppies who've had a rough start would be generally appreciated. Okay, so I guess the first thing I would really bring up is, since this is an Irish Wolfhound mix and it's already 80 pounds, I'm a giant breed fan. I've had Great Pyrenees or Great Pyrenees mixes since I was in college. The one thing that after you've had large breed dogs for a while, as you realize, is the development of a large breed puppy adolescence versus a smaller medium size breed. Because they get so big so fast, I think we kind of do them a disservice and we expect more out of them because they look grown up because they're so damn big. And talking to veterinarians, it's the exact opposite. These big dogs actually develop slower, even though they're bigger and they look like they're adults. It takes them longer. Whereas with a small breed dog, you might be able to consider them an adult dog at 12 months to 18 months. You're really not going to consider a giant breed dog adult wise, development wise, until maybe three. Okay. So, everybody talks about that blank stare and they just don't get it and things like that. So, the first thing I would talk about is to have way more patience with a large breed dog. Use one of mine for an example. I have a half Great Pyrenees, half German Shepherd named Liberty. She's going to be 2 years old in January, and she is just a royal mess right now. 90% of the time, she's just goofy, wants to play, doesn't pay attention. But then you'll have these little sparks of just clarity where she's just rock solid and, on it. And, if this was my first dog, I would be probably frustrated as all get out because it would be like, why can you do it sometimes, but you can't? And it's just maturity. They just need to grow up. You need to give them time to season. So the first thing I would tell Aaron is prepare yourself. At 7 months old, you're just entering the funnest part, and I say funnest with sarcasm, part of, owning a dog. This is going to be the toughest, most frustrating adolescence you go through. Now, flip side of that is I think it's kind of cool too because they're goofy, they're fun, they love life. They don't always pay attention, but it's just the beauty of a large breed dog. Okay, the second thing would be the magic of hand feeding and the curse of generalization. And what I mean by that Anybody who knows me knows that I am a huge hand feeder. I got the idea from Ian Dunbar. If you don't know who he is, Google search, look up iWoofs. Another great podcast, Godfather of Positive Reinforcement Dog Training. First guy to do off leash puppy classes. But he kind of introduced me to the idea of hand feeding. I wouldn't try to carve out 2 to 3 times a day to train the dog. I want the dog to learn a routine that fits my lifestyle versus me having to create routines that work for my dog's lifestyle. The fact that you're doing 2 to 3 training sessions a day is perfect. Split up the feeding for the dog to be okay. Let's say he gets, and I'm just going to use easy math for this example. But if it was 3 cups a day and I was training the dog 3 times a day, I would hand feed 1 cup morning, noon, evening. And I would just sit down and hand feed the dog. Every piece of food would come from a human hand. It goes back to the idea of don't bite the hand that feeds. It helps with bite inhibition. It helps with you got to pay attention or I'll put the food away. It kind of goes back to the old saying of, why do we pay for our kids' cell phone? Well, if you make me mad, I can take away your cell phone. It's resource control. And while some people would say that's not very positive reinforcement, you can definitely teach a dog to pay attention by, hey, when you see the bowl come out and I sit down and we're going to start going through our games, the dog is like, okay, it's time to pay attention. And we build routine. I don't yell, I don't scream, I don't use choke chains, prong collars, shot collars, any of that. But I will use a little bit of resource control of, hey, I have what you want and you have to come through me to get it. So I guess in a way that is one way that, dogs know that I'm quote unquote the leader. Okay. I don't want to get into the world of alpha dominance. It's not something I'm interested in, but hand feeding is one way that I can definitely convince the dog that you need me to help you get fed, and then while we're doing the feeding, let's go ahead and kill 2 birds with 1 stone and work on some skills. The sit, the down, the watch me. I think the turnaround game is really important, and for those that don't know me, these games that I'm talking about, I would really recommend going to the YouTube channel and looking at the playlist hand feeding. Okay, these are the games that I play while I'm hand feeding a dog. She mentions that she's working on those base commands, but then trying to do stay. And for me, doing a stay is all about a positive mark and a release word. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with a positive mark and a release word, the positive mark is simply how you tell the dog you did what I wanted and you got it right. I say thank you. So if I say sit, the minute the rear end touches the ground, I will say thank you. Most people would then hand the dog the food. I'm not going to hand the dog the food. I'll say thank you, and then I start counting off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I will release the dog to my side, and I'll say all done. My hand drops, and the dog can break the stay, break the command, which then turns into a stay, and come get the food. And if I combine teaching the skills of sit down and watch me, along with a thank you, pause for 5 seconds, hand drop, all done, the dog starts working on stay without even realizing it. Okay, it's usually in that second session that I work with a client that I start going, okay, you're already doing a stay, you just didn't realize it, so now we're going to say thank you, stay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all done. And you build the commands and the stay at the same time. But if you haven't seen videos like this, me trying to describe it can be a little weird, so we'll put a link to that hand feeding playlist so that you can kind of see where we start. The curse of generalization, what I mean by that is you can have your dog doing everything brilliantly inside the living room where you've been doing your hand feeding for 2 or 3 weeks, but the minute you walk out the front door, out the back door, or try to go out in the garage and get in the car, the dog falls completely apart. And it's really because dogs don't generalize information. Me as a dog trainer, you're probably listening to this on a podcast, or maybe you're watching the video on YouTube. I do virtual training. I've taught group classes. I teach individual classes. I've written books. I've got a blog. I have no problem taking what I know about dog training and putting it in lots of different environments and generalizing my knowledge to different areas. Okay, this is something that humans do really well and dogs struggle hard with. And I think this is the key to some of the problems Erin's having is she's probably seeing some results in the house. Now she's gone to the backyard. But I think sometimes we think that we're going to go, okay, I went from A, B, and C in the house. Now I'm going to do D, E, F, and G in the backyard. And it doesn't work that way. When you go to the backyard, you start over again at A and kind of work back up. Now you're going to be able to ramp up ABC pretty quick in the backyard because we already know it. But when I move to the backyard, I'm just going to get, a lawn chair, camp chair, piece of furniture in the backyard, whatever it is, and I'm just going to sit and we're just going to kind of start over and we're going to get the dog to pay attention in the backyard. And literally that might take me 3, 4, 5 days. Then I'm going to start working on some different things of moving maybe one corner to one, kind of all four corners of your backyard, having the dog just follow you off leash. And then whenever you stop, you get to sit and you ask for a down or you do this. But I think probably what's happening is she kind of tried to take, just continue the process instead of taking 2 steps back so you can take 3 steps forward. So that would be another suggestion. When I say, I want to work in different levels of distraction, she's already on the right track. And that's the cool part is you teach your dog to do stuff inside the house and you reward it and your positive reinforcement and you do all that. And then we move to the backyard and we have to teach the dog to pay attention in the backyard and do the skills in the backyard. Then I'm going to move to the front yard and I'm going to work on the driveway first. Now, a lot of people are like, why the driveway first? Well, concrete holds less scent than the grass. So I'm going to move from the backyard to the driveway and I'm going to get all my skills. I'm going to walk around the driveway and get the dog to do it. Then I'm going to move to the driveway. Now, let's take one step back. When I move from inside the house to the backyard, that's where I start introducing the leash. And most people are like, well, why do I need a leash? There's a fence. Well, we just talked about the front yard. Obviously, in the front yard, you're going to need a leash. Even though you've got a fence in the backyard, why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Put the leash, on the dog and get the dog used to being on leash in an environment they're used to. So, the backyard's going to have more distraction than the front yard, but it's still where I go out and I poop and I pee and I get let out. So it's an environment I kind of already know. So it's a good intermediary kind of level of distraction that the dog already has a pretty good idea of. Now, when we move to the front yard, things get way harder. The front yard is the forbidden fruit. It's the Garden of Eden. It's where I'm never allowed to be. Most people do not train their dogs in the front yard because there's just no reason to do it. But I would argue because we don't do a lot of work in the front yard, this is why most dogs who get loose in the front yard take off and run for the hills. They're like, I'll write when I find work, and they're gone. Well, it's because they're never allowed to be in the front yard, so it's new, it's exciting. I want to experience everything. So when you move from the house to the backyard, you're going to add a layer of generalization and distraction and difficulty, and it'll be frustrating, but you're going to get it pretty quick. I would say most of my clients, I put 2 weeks in between each session, and that second session where we move from the house to the backyard, people pick up pretty quick. That third session where we start working in the driveway and the front yard, that's the hardest level jump to make. And the dog is going to be distracted by sights, smells, sounds, all that good stuff. And we got to really fight and start over again. We back up to the simple stuff in the driveway and we work it. And then we kind of back up and start on the simple stuff in the driveway. And then we start moving around. And at this point, we're just trying to deal with the level of distraction in the front yard. Okay. This is also where we really introduce the idea of paying attention or a leave it or a redirection cue. You can call it anything you want, but all dogs need to learn to work under distraction. They need to understand what frustration tolerance and impulse control is, and they need to be redirectable around a distraction. And what I mean by that, for me, it's a leave it command. You can call it anything you want. Dogs don't speak English, and we don't speak dog. So they're going to really be looking for a hand signal. And again, for me, that magic hand signal is dropping the hand to the side and saying, here, come get your reward. That could be called recall. That could be called releasing out of a stay. That could be a leave it, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. I even use it with leash skills, where if the dog is pulling, as they kind of trail out on the leash or the long line, right before they're going to hit the end of the line, I say easy and I stop walking. And when I stop walking, the dog turns around and look at me to see what's wrong, and my hand's down at my side. I'm like, you pulled on the leash. You got to come back. They come back, they sit, we restart, and we start over. I kind of joke with people that pulling on leash is like a holding penalty in a football game. The game stops, the flag gets thrown, you got to come back to the line of scrimmage, you got to start over, and we go. If you keep slacking the leash, we're just going to keep walking. Sorry, little sidebar there. But when you teach a leave it command, a lot of trainers look at it as a no no bad dog command. For me, leave it is don't look at that, look at me. So if I'm in the front yard and the dog is distracted by a smell or a sight or a sound, if they, now, first of all, smells. I do think it's really important to let your dog sniff on a walk, experience the world within reason. If you're checking your P mail and you're doing things that makes dogs happy, that is their zen. I think you should let them do it. Don't be a tyrant, okay? But after 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds of sniffing, I'm going to practice a leave it command and go, hey, leave it. And the dog's going to come over to my hand and redirect away from the smell and back to me. So quit paying attention to that, pay attention to me. As we move from that idea, it could be that I heard something and I look over to the side and I'm going to say, hey, leave it. And the dog's going to look at me and then gets rewarded for paying attention. If they see a person or a dog, I want them to be redirectable. If you see it, look at me. I mean, squirrels, okay? All sorts of things that you can use a leave it for. But it is always confused me why some trainers, we really want to start on stay. We really want to start on place. We really want to start on these things. And for me, the apex command is redirection. If you're distracted, can I get you to look at me and quit paying attention to that and pay attention here? And then everything falls into place, okay? These would be the tips that I would use with a dog like this. And I would tell you that if we did 2 weeks in the house and then moved to 2 weeks in the backyard, and then we worked 2 weeks in the front yard, and that would be driveway and front yard, the fourth session would be now let's start working from this driveway, yours, and go to the next driveway. Come back to yours, go to the driveway on this side. And we're walking, and I'm stopping, and I always tell people, I want you, when you start practicing loose leash walking, is get a sit at every driveway so the dog doesn't think a walk is just a go and be crazy. We're going to stop, and we're going to think, and we're going to perform, and we're going to get rewards at every driveway, which forces the dog to think on a walk, not just zone out. Frustrates some of my clients because they go for walks for their own exercise versus the training of the dog, and those are two things that at the very beginning just don't mesh. So that's that fourth session where we start building a walk, and we build it very small. It's driveway, driveway here, driveway, driveway here, 2 driveways that way, 2 driveways, 3 driveways, and we build the walk so that we're constantly working in areas we understand and adding just a little bit of new stuff to the end of every walk. The fifth session, which is, usually the final session that I do with clients, is going to be the idea of me adding my dog to the mix and using my dog as a blocking dummy who doesn't care. As long as we pay attention to dad, we get cookies, and you can practice a leave it command, okay? So from there, we can go to a retail establishment, work in a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Bass Pro or Cabela's or one of these other locations, and add even another layer of distraction. And usually at that point, clients kind of get the idea and they go with it. I do think that, in this discussion we're having, the books that I've written, the 5 Steps to the Perfect Pet, would be a good place to start. From there, I would probably do the recall book, How to Get Your Good Dog to Come Without Being a Butthead. Third, I would probably do Whoa Dog Whoa, which is not pulling on leash. And the next one I would do is, Downward Dog, which is not jumping up on people. But it's just a process. It takes 12 years to get our kids out of high school, and then we hope they're ready for college or life. we expect that after a 6 week, training program, at a training facility, our dogs are going to be ready to move off into the world and do it. If you think about it, my platinum package is 5 sessions, and I put 2 weeks in between. Well, that's 10 weeks worth of practice just with me, and then you got to finish up with the work. Consistency and frequency are the key to dog training. You got to pick one or the other, and you got to do both. So hopefully, Aaron, that helps with some of your questions. If anybody's got any other questions, this is the kind of stuff I love because it's specifics and we can kind of work on it. If anybody's got any questions, email, reach out via the website. This one was a one topic talk, but like I said, this is the fun stuff. So it's Mike with K.I.S.S Dog Training. Appreciate it. You have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.